Mother-in-law, 56, female, deliberately infected my 27, female, 1-year-old daughter with chickenpox. I'm livid. She doesn't think it's a big deal. I can hardly type this out because thinking about it makes me so angry. Earlier this year, my husband, 31, male, and I decided to spend Christmas with his family for the first time since my daughter Annie, 13 months, was born last September. Since they live 12 hours away, we decided to stay for a few weeks before Christmas so they could spend loads of time with Annie. We arrived early like we planned, and everything was great. I've had a few disagreements with my mother-in-law, Trish, 56, female, in the past over my parenting style. She criticized me for using disposable diapers, buying baby food from the supermarket, and not raising Annie as an organic baby, but everything seemed great. After a day or two settling in my husband, and I decided to pick up a few gifts from a mall around an hour away before the last-minute rush kicked in. My father-in-law, 60, male, tagged along. Trish said she was happy to take care of Annie. We got back a few hours later, and Annie was down for a nap on a blanket I didn't recognize. Trish said one of her friends dropped by and gave it as an early Christmas gift. It looked pretty old and worn, but I figured one of her hippie friends was just recycling it. The next 2 weeks were fine, aside from Trish making a point to prepare meals for Annie from scratch. I mentioned this to my husband, and he said to just let her be. Annie mostly mushed the food Trish gave her with her hands or threw the bowls on the floor, as she's been doing at the moment. Trish said it would take her a while to get used to nutritious meals. I was getting sick of her meddling, but it was only for a few weeks, so for the sake of the holidays, I let it slide. The day after Christmas, Annie was really unsettled and wouldn't stop fidgeting and crying. I took her temperature and she had a fever, so I kept an eye on her for the next few days, and it thankfully started to go down. This morning, she started to get a rash and blisters on her arms and legs, and I freaked out. I was packing a bag to drive to see a doctor when Trish asked where I was going. I told her Annie had a rash, and I was taking her to see a doctor. She got a weird, smug smile on her face and told me there was nothing to worry about. When I asked her what she was talking about, she said, without even looking at Annie, that what she had was just chickenpox. I asked her how she could possibly know that, and she casually admitted one of her friend's grandkids had chickenpox a few weeks ago, so she asked them to wipe a blanket over the child's arms, legs, and face and bring it to her house. At this point, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so I asked if that blanket was the gift Annie was sleeping on. She said it was. I lost my shit. To be honest, I don't really remember what I said because I was up most of the night for 2 days checking on Annie. I just unleashed on Trish, asking what the fuck was wrong with her. My husband and father-in-law came to try to calm things down, and Trish dug in her heels and said chickenpox was the best and most natural thing for Annie to build up her immunity. I already have a vaccination schedule in place with my pediatrician, and she was booked in to get immunized for chickenpox at 18 months. We drove to see the doctor, and he confirmed she had it. He said I'll have to cut Annie's nails short and might have to tape socks on her hands while she sleeps because kids so young can scratch until they bleed, and that will leave scars. On the drive back, my husband started making excuses for Trish that she was only doing what she thought was best. I couldn't believe he was defending her, and we fought most of the way home until I told him to stop talking to me. Annie's been scratching like crazy, and I just had to tape socks over her hands. Trish tried to talk to me when we got back, and I told her to get out of my sight. We were meant to stay until Wednesday, but I just finished packing up our stuff so we can leave first thing in the morning. I'm so angry I can't even think. Whenever I hear Trish moving around in the kitchen, my heart starts beating faster and I feel like going out there and grabbing her by the hair. I don't ever want to see her again or let my daughter see her again. What can I say to make her and my husband realize the enormity of what she's done? I don't think I can speak coherently to their faces until Annie gets better. Relevant comments. When asked why her daughter wasn't vaccinated for chickenpox, she's up to date on her vaccination schedule. She was vaccinated for measles a month ago and booked in to get the chickenpox vaccine at 18 months old, as normal. Update: thank you to everyone for your comments, inbox messages, and advice after my original post. I read all the comments and messages, and they genuinely helped, especially the home remedies on how to stop itching. I didn't think it would be possible, but things got worse. I got up first thing the next morning and started packing our stuff into the car. Once I opened it up, I kept the keys in my pocket since I was going in and out. Usually we use Jack's set and leave mine in my bag. While I was packing, he sat in the kitchen with Trish and my father-in-law and chatted and had coffee like nothing was wrong. Annie was mercifully still asleep, so I just gently belted her in and closed her door when Jack came out and asked if I had everything. I said we were good to go as soon as he was. He said okay and calmly took out his key set and centrally locked the car, locking Annie in. I asked him what the hell he was doing, and he said we wouldn't be leaving until I apologized to Trish. I think I was stunned into silence because he then took the chance to rehash what he said the previous day. That Trish thought she was doing what was best, that chickenpox doesn't kill you, and that I was making a bigger deal out of this than I needed to and making Trish feel bad. Yes, making her feel bad. All the comments from my last post were swirling around in my head, and I told him he needs to stop being a son and start being a father. He screwed up his face and said he would always be Trish's son, and that was the point, that nobody should speak to his mother the way I had the day before, and I needed to apologize to clear the air. I felt like I had entered some kind of weird twilight zone where I had accidentally married a 9-year-old instead of an adult man, so I just asked him to open the car so we could leave. He repeatedly refused, then walked back inside and said he would see me in there when I was acting more reasonable. You can probably guess what happened next. I'd left my bag on the passenger seat, so he probably assumed my keys were in there. Nope. I waited 30 seconds, then just hopped into the car and drove away. My phone blew up with a million calls from him, Trish, and my father-in-law. Eventually, my mom and dad and my sister Jess, who I'm super close with, called as well. I'd briefly texted Jess about what was happening the day before, but she was stunned to get the full blow-by-blow. By the time I was on the open road, I asked her to phone Jack and tell him he could walk home for all I care. Once she heard my side of the story, and not Jack's, which was apparently that I had gone crazy, frightened Trish, snatched Annie and sped away, she calmed way down. Mom, Dad, and Jess offered to start driving and meet me halfway so I could switch with one of them and wouldn't have to drive the full 12 hours by myself in one day. I was so grateful to see them, I pretty much broke down in a truck stop parking lot while I blubbered that I loved them. They all took turns driving while I had a rest. It was super reassuring to talk it over and hear that Trish and Jack are the unreasonable ones. Once we got back, I stayed at my parents' overnight, and they said I could stay as long as I needed. The next few days were fairly tense. I was up most of the night making sure Annie didn't scratch, which she did anyway, somehow, and it seemed like she just cried and cried and cried until she was exhausted. She has 5 scars on her face and a few others on her arms from scratching. I know appearances shouldn't matter, but I'm so angry her skin is marked for life now over some stupid bullshit. This whole thing is just something I never expected to happen. I answered one of Jack's calls only to have him start a rant that he didn't recognize this person I had become, so I hung up on him. He was due to come back for the start of the work year, which I wasn't looking forward to, but I figured we could make it work as long as Trish was 12 hours away. Then, at like 11 p.m. one night, I got a very short and formal text from father-in-law via Jack's phone, saying Trish had come down with shingles and was in the emergency room, that Jack was staying there to care for her, and that he would work from their house remotely once the year started back up. Jack's been there for the past few weeks tending to Mama's every whim. I'm sure she's put on an Oscar-worthy performance of having one foot in the grave. And according to Google, it should be any day now that her painful, crusty pustules go gently into that sweet night. A few weeks ago, I was honestly so tired and overwhelmed and in disbelief that I didn't know what to do. Now I'm back at home with people who actually care about me. I think I'm starting to realize how lucky I am to see the weird relationship with his mommy this early on. The fact that he cares more about Trish than his own daughter speaks volumes. When he eventually comes back, I think we'll have to have a serious talk about our future together.